Hey, you all, it's week 33. We are talking about another important issue this week, which affects all of us. Raise your hand right now if you use energy at some point during the day. I hope you're all raising your hand because everybody uses energy every day, all day, every day. We use it to power our cell phones. I'm using it to power my laptop right now. We use it to drive around in our cars. We use it for all forms of electricity, heating and cooling our houses. Those are just a few examples of how we use energy on a daily basis. This week, we are going to talk about how we actually produce that energy, mainly in the United States, but we'll also talk about the rest of the world. We've been talking a lot about climate change. Scientists have proven through multiple studies that the main contributors, the main things causing climate change are the transportation sector, that gas that comes out of the muffler of your car, and the electricity production sector, aka these chimneys that you see on the screen that are producing carbon dioxide and methane as a result of making electricity. So we're going to study different ways that we can produce energy that can be used as electricity or heating buildings or in cars, and what those effects are on humans and our environment, and specifically the climate, because that affects all of that, right? Okay, so in the end, you are going to make a recommendation for one source of energy, either why we should use it or why we shouldn't. So I'm really interested to see what you're going to come up with there. Feel free to post that response on your assignment to the discussion thread, and that'll count as your reflection this week, because that's you reflecting on what we've learned. Energy production in the United States and Wisconsin comes mainly from these sources. We're going to be talking about sources like coal, natural gas, petroleum, which is another word for oil, wind and solar, biomass, nuclear energy, hydropower, and even more, like geothermal energy. Each of these has its own advantages and disadvantages. Renewable energy is anything that we have an unlimited supply of, versus non-renewable energy, which will run out someday. We have a limited supply on Earth and we have no way of making more. Renewable energy comes in the form of biomass, wind, water, geothermal, solar, because we'll never run out of sunlight. Well, okay, if you were in the astronomy unit, you know that in about 10 billion years, our sun will turn into a red giant, but that's beside the point. In our foreseeable future, we will not run out of solar energy or wind energy or water energy. However, we will run out of non-renewable energy sources like oil, like uranium, like natural gas and coal. We cannot make more of that stuff. So when we use it all up, we're done. That's it. We have to use renewable energy at that point. So renewable energy is also a great way to mitigate climate change. We've been so focused on climate change as it's one of the most important issues that your generation will face in your lifetime. Fossil fuels put carbon dioxide and methane into our atmosphere. Those are greenhouse gases. You all know what that means now. Those are causing our climate to warm and in some places cool, and it's causing a whole bunch of other effects that you've already studied. Renewable energies produce much, much, much less of these harmful gases, which is why they're sometimes called green energy sources too. Let's take a look at where we get our energy in the United States. I want you to notice here, let me point out what we're looking at. This circle here, this is how we get our energy. This is how we produce electricity. This small section right here, the renewable energy, which is only 11% of all the energy we use, this renewable energy sector is broken up into this column, which tells us where we're getting the renewable energy. Is it from water? Is it from biofuel, wind, solar? So I just want you to know what you're looking at here. One thing that I want to point out to you, most of the energy we're using, 89%, is non-renewable, meaning one day we will run out of this source. It is also producing a lot of greenhouse gas. I put this website on here so that you can explore it on your own time, or I'm very flexible with our assignments. If you want to write me a reflection of how this helped you better understand energy production in Wisconsin, I will accept that in place of your assignment. This website has an interactive map that you can click on that shows you where various power plants are in our state and the whole country, actually. On the bottom right, you can see a close-up that I took a snapshot of in Madison. Notice those blue things are natural gas. Those brown things are petroleum. We've got one that shows biomass on the top left and one on the top right, the east side of Madison there, that shows wind energy. Not looking too clean, Madison. Take a look at this graph. Wisconsin, how are we producing electricity? Most of our electricity comes from natural gas and coal-fired power plants. We also get a sizable portion from nuclear, which may not necessarily be such a bad thing. I'll let you do the research on nuclear and get back to me on that. And then down here, our renewable energy sources like water, hydroelectric, and other non-water renewables, they don't really make up a huge portion of where we get our energy from. So in the United States and Wisconsin, the take-home message is we rely mainly on non-renewable energy sources. Okay, this is just another graph that shows you where we're getting our energy from in the United States. We already discussed this. I just wanted to give you these graphs so you could look at it in a different way, whatever way makes the most sense to you. Some people like line graphs, bar graphs, whatever you prefer. I've got it all here for you so you don't have to go out of your way and research that. You may be asking yourself this question, Mr. Shepard, what about the rest of the world? We're not isolated in some bubble from the rest of the world, are we? No, we are not. Take a look at this map here. The red countries are the countries that are not really using renewable energy very much, whereas the blue countries are the ones that are getting a majority of their energy from renewable energy sources. Notice that most of the developed world is red, meaning most developed countries are not really utilizing renewables. Some countries, you can see a large portion of Africa, Canada, Scandinavia, which is like Sweden, Iceland, and Norway, and even South America, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Colombia. These countries are all utilizing renewables. This is another graph that really hits home with where renewable energy is produced compared to how much energy that country is actually using. So you can notice countries like China and the US actually are producing the most renewable energy in the world. However, you can see when you compare the blue line to the orange line, that is really a small portion of our total energy needs. Countries like Brazil, Canada, they're producing slightly less renewable energy than we are, but it's a majority of their needs. They're hitting maybe 90% or 70% of their total needs. So they're really efficient, would be the word for that. So that's the situation in the rest of the world, and that's United States in that context. Let's talk about what you're responsible for this week with your assignment. Since we all use energy every day, all day, we should figure out the advantages and disadvantages of different sources of that energy. So you're going to be doing just that, researching 4 different sources of energy out of the 10 that I've listed. I want you to focus on the key differences between renewable and non-renewable energy in that investigation. When you finish, you're going to be making one recommendation. Pick one of those 4 sources that you did further research on and make a recommendation for or against its use. For example, you might research solar energy and make a recommendation that we should be using solar energy more because of this reason, whatever your research tells you. Another example, you might recommend against using something like coal as an energy source for whatever reasons. If you've been paying attention to this presentation, you might recommend against coal because it produces greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, which contributes to climate change. Okay, so which energy source will you recommend that we do or do not use in the US and Wisconsin? Lots of options for you. As always, please reach out to me if you have any questions about the assignment. If you ever have an idea like, hey, Mr. Shepard, I would much rather show you that I understand energy production by doing this other thing. I'm totally flexible. If you've got a good idea, I want to hear it, and I'm going to let you do that for your grade. Okay, I miss you all. Listen, 3 weeks left after this, 3.5. You got this. Finish strong. This will benefit you in your adult life. This will benefit you in your daily adult life or at whatever college you choose. Okay, you all have a good week.